to our midweek show. We have some special guests here today, and we thank you for showing up. We thank you for listening because your voice matters.
And I'm Rob Mel. I am the other half of TruGossip, and together we're first cousins. And remember, this is a platform where your opinion matters, where your opinion is your truth, and we like to talk about it. Today, as Tanya mentioned, we have some special guests. But first, we have a returning guest, and Bishop Brick Pleasure. We appreciate him blessing us with his presence. But we do have, as we focus on the millennials, we have two millennials on the show for the very first time. We have the Reverend Chris Dow. Would you take time to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody.
And then we also have another special guest, a millennial. His name is Jamel. He happens to be the son of Tanya. Welcome to the show, Jamel.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be on the platform today.
Great.
I can't wait to share my thoughts.
Great, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be the facilitator this afternoon, so let's get right to it. In recent light of what's been going on with George Floyd's untimely passing due to the police officers' irrational behavior, there's been a lot of protests, and I think we all can agree that the protest that we're witnessing is probably the most significant protest since maybe the protesters that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had led during the Civil Rights Movement. But more importantly, they're being spearheaded by millennials and also by white folks as well. So today's theme is going to focus on the millennials' role and their focus. So I like to ask this question to Cristal. How can millennials cause change in the political world?
Well, when it comes to millennials making change in the political world, we need to realize that our voices cannot be silenced anymore because we have been made to feel like we are lower than the generation below us. Now, age-wise, yes, we are lower, but we are still as equally smart, and we do have a voice and things that need to be said and things that need to be heard in our communities. But do not judge us by our age and think, oh, that because they are of this millennial technological generation that they do not know as much. Because if you do the research, you will see that the millennial generation, we are getting educated at a younger age than the generations before us. Many millennials have their bachelor's, master's, associate's degrees younger than the generation before us. So we know what should be said, but our voices get silenced because people look at us as, oh, they're just a technological generation. They don't know anything. But we do know a lot more than people perceive. And when it comes to the political world, if they would use our experience and our expertise and allow us to come out there in the battlefield, people, especially in this world day and time, will listen to a millennial more than they'll listen to an older person, because they'll just say, oh, that older person just spitting off, that old gibberish. But millennial knows how to talk the talk and walk the walk.
Before I pass it over to Jamel, I do want to piggyback off of what you said, Reverend Cristal, and I appreciate what you said. There was a report that I came aware of, I want to say about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that the millennials is the age group that had the most millionaires because of maybe they grew up in the technology and because of a lot of things that you're saying. And I agree with you, that theory of that old man, get off my lawn, that needs to be put aside because I think age shouldn't hold back your generation because you guys are very wise. Jamel, what do you think? How can millennials or someone like your age group or yourself can affect change in the political world?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this question. When my mom sent it to me, I thought of a couple of different ways to attack this, and I've settled on one, which is I think that we mostly need interests. I think generally where perhaps the last generation failed us and where we can have more strength is just to have interest in what's going on. It shouldn't take you know, a man dying in the streets, or it shouldn't take, you know, like these major events to occur for us to gain interest or garner interest in what's going on, or, you know, wanting to affect change to begin with. You know, I find that, like, you know, people in my generation, you know, you're right. There are more millionaires, there are more business owners, you know, coming from my generation these days, which is an amazing thing. But what we're missing is like the ability to care about someone other than ourselves. Um, and I think that's where we need to grow. And I think we need to learn community, learning, you know, to know one another within our communities. You know, I remember growing up, you know, probably by the time I became like a teenager, you know, I stopped caring about like knowing my neighbors and stuff like that. We only knew our direct next door neighbor, and that was it. Yeah. And like, you didn't know what was really going on, and it wasn't unusual to be in a neighborhood like that where no one knows each other. So I think we need to start being interested in the stuff, knowing what's going on, knowing how you can affect change, and being able to coordinate, organize together, and like really affect something major. So yeah.
You know, before I pass it on to Bishop, it's interesting, and this is why we wanted to have the millennials on, because, you know, Reverend Chris Styles, she said that you guys are more educated, you have degrees, and you're more focused when it comes down to school, and you guys achieve more. And it's probably so, because I think my generation maybe focused on money and getting a job while you guys are going to school. And then you said something very interesting, Jamel, and, you know, you're right. Your generation, it's not a selfish generation. I wouldn't use that word, but I think that the days of moving into a neighborhood and everybody comes over and welcomes you with an apple pie and
Right.
introduce themselves and be involved, I would venture to say we can ride through any neighborhood and blinds are down, shades are down, because we're to ourselves. That's an interesting point. Bishop, listening to the younger generation speak their opinion and their truth, I would like not only for you to tell us what role that the millennials can make in political change, but I'd like to know if you agree, disagree with what they have to say. Bishop?
Is he here?
Oh,
Well, first of all,
he must be frozen.
you can.
Are you there,
No, I'm
Bishop?
not frozen. I'm talking.
No, you were frozen.
You were
So
frozen.
whatever
Say it
you
again.
said, please say again.
You there?
Bishop? Oh, he's frozen again.
Okay, the people of today, I want to commend them for their works and what they're doing in the communities. I realize and recognize that in the body of believers that you are one of the precious Jews also sent by God. And yes, I agree with you. You guys, this generation that's raising up are very influential. I think that you could be the next president, you could be the next governors, you could be the next leaders of this world. I believe that in this, the most important part for you guys to do right now is to get out and vote. Make your voice be known at the polls, because you guys are not the future. You're the today that makes the future. And I want to commend you guys for taking out your time to come and participate on this panel. And I also want to encourage you to encourage others, because the greatest encouragement is to hear from your own peers. When I was growing up, influence was the thing between the people. And yes, we did have to go to the house with a pie. Today we stay away from the house because we don't know if we're gonna get hit with a pie when we go, because of this generation and time that we've come to pass, because the Jim Crow mentality has crossed over into the millennial. But I want y'all to know to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. For the situations, the Egyptians, the circumstances you see today, you can make it be seen no more. Thank you.
Right. And I appreciate that take on that perspective, Bishop. You always bless us with some kind words and thoughtful words. And before we go back around, I like to go to my co-host and see if she has any comments on this.
Yeah, I do have some comments on that, and thank you. And I thank Jamel and Christelle for your insight on that. So I just want to piggyback off of where there is no organization. You know, we were in that Me Too movement, and you guys, the Millennium, y'all were out there. Y'all were protesting. Y'all were out there shouting this Me Too. And I'm directing this one to Christelle because she is a female, and the Me Too movement was about with the females being sexually harassed and stuff like that. So I'm wondering what happened to that movement. Y'all were so strong out there, but it seemed like the millenniums fell away from that. Why is that? I just want to ask for that if you don't mind.
Well, in my opinion, when it comes down to the Me Too movement, the reason why it fell off is because all these big abrupt lawsuits start popping off, and they was like, okay, it's causing so much chaos and controversy, and it was starting to topple, the whole sexism, bringing sexism back into the workplace. And as a female growing up, you do not want to have more sexism in the workplace. So it kind of calmed out, but it's not at a standstill, because plenty of millennial females still do talk about it, and we still do observe it when we go on these job interviews and places that we do work at. And even as a African American woman, Tanya, you understand that, we are judged more highly in the workplace as, oh, well, they're not going to know as much as the white woman, or that we are judged by our physique, the curvature, I should say, of our bodies. And we are looked at as, oh, well, the higher with the body. And, we didn't want to cause more sexism to erupt, and all these lawsuits. And some of those lawsuits that were being made were just abrupt, slanderous lawsuits from women trying to get a buck. And we are trying to distinguish which is real and which is false, which is the ones that are real and which is the ones trying to get on the 10 o'clock news just to say, oh, that man harassed me.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Ramel.
Now, Christophe, before I move on to Jamel said something that was very important. And he said something that the millenniums, they come out, and they come out big, and they come out aggressive whenever something happens. And then when the dust settles, it seems like your group moves away. And again, you don't come out until something else happened.
Mm-hmm.
So if I got it right from him, it seems like you guys have to stay consistent with your approach. In other words, let's not wait till something happens. So what do you feel about that? What is it that the millenniums can do prior to something happen to stay consistent, stay relevant, or to keep their message afloat?
Right. I think really where that starts is that you need to define your message. I think where we get lost is that, we know what our mission is when things happen, because I don't want my brother to die. I don't want, my sister to get raped. I don't, and these things are real when it happens to people. But you don't define what it is that you need, what it is that will accomplish change for you, that when it happens and you see it, that change has occurred. Since that is never being defined, it's easy for these things to fizzle out. They fizzle out so easily. And, I want to go back to that Me Too movement thing, because, we got to look at these movements as case studies, and the Me Too movement, honestly, the way that I see it, it was a hijacking of a movement where the message changes halfway through. When it started, it was about, how people in authority are using that privilege of authority to put women in circumstances that they felt that they had no other choice but to give their sexual advances or whatever, and there's something to be said about that. But that message has been completely obscured by the fact that transgenders jumped on your mission, and then it became about sluts and being a slut and being able to do whatever promiscuous activity with my body and not care about the consequences. And the mission got hijacked, where now someone can say to you, people who genuinely are affected by this movement, people can come to you and say, well, you know, are you a slut? Well, what do you think about these transgenders? And if you disagree with that, they think that you completely don't stand for your mission, and it makes you feel like you don't want to be a part of it anymore. The feminist movement got taken over, you know, the civil rights movement. Like, when did my justice become about being equal to anybody? I just want to be free. You know, like, that's my message that I would like to get out. So, like, I don't want to be equal to anybody, because we're not equal. And we don't need to create the illusion that equality is something that is even possible with us. I don't want to be equal to you. I just want to be free. I want you to stop fucking with me. And we need to get that message out there. That's what we need, something visceral, and we need to come together on something solid. So I think that's where we need to start, if you ask me.
Thank you for your bluntness.
Jamel, may I interject with what Jamel just said? Jamel just said.
Sure, go right ahead.
You know,
but I want to get the Bishop, though.
As a millennial generation, we have the biggest weapon of all. And our weapon is the technology system. And, you know, like Bishop's generation and the generation before him, they are not as tech savvy as we are. If we use our technology to our advantage, we can get the word out, not just in our own communities, but around the country and around the countries. And as a Black millennial, as a female millennial, and as a disabled millennial, you know, I know that through technology, people will listen. And
Absolutely.
like the other day, I posted a video on Facebook telling the disabled community to roll for justice and to get out and roll to the polls in November. Now, I don't know how many people have viewed that video, but one person viewed it for a show that they sent it to 10 other friends, and 10 will turn into 20, 20 will turn to 30, 30 can turn into 100.
Right.
And if 100 women or even 100 disabled people out to vote, then I have done my part that God has told me to do, and through my generation. And that's why the government, to be honest with you, is in the state that's in, because the more millennials would have listened and gotten out and voted 4 years ago, we would have our first female president. And we would not probably be in the condition that we are in today. But the millennials thought that that election, because we already had a Black president, that we couldn't get a woman up in there after the Black president, that we couldn't do nothing and accomplish something. But now, because we, as a people, now I did go vote. I can't, you know, talk about my brothers and sisters over there, but I know I got out and voted. Okay, and my vote was for Hillary Clinton. And so if we get out and use the technology that the Lord has blessed us with, then in 2020, we can knock 45 about it and get somebody up in there that'll be better of service unto us and unto
Thank you,
this country.
for that.
I understand your point. I wanted to get Bishop's take on this, and piggybacking off the question and giving him a chance to close out the segment. But I wanted to say this, Bishop. I've listened to your service so many times, and you often say that you preach, you reach. And, you know, what is it that we can do, our generation, to help the millennials on their quest, on their journey, and keep them consistent, but more importantly, as Jamel said, keep their interest? What can we do better? What do you suggest, or what ideas do you have?
Well, first, I want to commend you young people again. And I'm excited that Jamel felt with freedom of speech.
Sorry.
But it's okay, because I think that that's the problem with the church. We don't allow the youth, the young people of today, to be themselves. We're trying to mold them as we were as children growing up as Christians. You can't wear pants. You can't wear. You gotta wear a dress. You can't wear your hair this way. You can't do this. You can't do that. And that's the problem with the church. And as far as it goes to the millennial, you guys are absolutely right. You're technical swivvy. You know how to do that. You have a relationship that has built up with the grouping in the area in which you are. And if
He's muted.
You're mute, Bishop. You're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Please repeat that for us.
Somebody that's only the group. If people would allow the younger generation, that the millennial generation lead the millennial people, then it will be more effective.
Amen.
I'm making it a point across to you because we came up in the same area. So we remember an example like going to parliaments, being 5%ers, stop eating pork, only, living a different lifestyle, and all the process that we went through. We went through our process. Allow them to go through there. We can't condone misbehavior, but we can say, thy good and faithful servant with a job well done. Because we want to encourage them. We must be encouragers to our youth to let them know that your words mean something. Your value to us. You make us who we are today. You are not the future. You're the today. We have been so embedded in talking about. We tell our children, you're you're the future. Well, in their mind's eye, you know what it tells me? I don't have to do nothing right now.
Right.
Because the future's not.
Yeah.
Everyone.
May I say something?
Ability.
When he's done, I don't know.
Bishop, we're having a hard time understanding you. You're coming in and out.
Now he's muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's muted now. Can you unmute yourself, Bishop? Are you able to unmute?
Let's move on then. When Bishop comes back in, we'll let him go ahead and finish his statement. I just want to.
What I was saying was that them to be who God in the tribulations. Let's allow people to be where they are, meet them where they are, and then grow them to where they need to go. So we reach them, and we get them encouraged. We get them excited about what we're doing. If it's dancing, singing, if it's protesting, whatever it may be, we reach there. We get them, we reach them. Then we preach, then we teach them. We teach them the way it should be done, and then we preach to them. And then it could work for the better. Amen?
Amen.
Well, we're going to let Tanya close this out, this segment. And your thoughts on this, Tanya?
Yeah, thank you, Ramel. I just want to say that I believe that the millennials, if they can get organized, they can become organized. And the bishop says something about, that they need to organize or they need a leader, that somebody should step up and become a leader. Just like with the Black Lives Matter, it's so many of these groups, so many of these people. I don't even know who and where to go to find out where the next protest is going to be. But I found out some information, and I will share that with you guys. But I just want to close out that millennials. I believe if they get great organization, they find someone that can lead them and guide them, and they can do it collectively. They can be more prominent in their own neighborhoods and communities. Reach out and ask and say, hey, who you guys are. Bring, like they said, an apple pie over to your neighbor. And I believe that could make a big difference in the community. Thank you, Ramel, for letting me close that out.
So, Tanya, before we move on, Tanya, I do want to ask you, what advice or what do you think that the millennials can do to have their voices heard?
Well, I'm gonna piggyback off the Cristal. Because of their technology advancement, they have a worldwide platform. That's a platform in itself where they can reach millions of people in a swipe of a key. And all they have to do is get something out there to let them know that. And if they use that, and which they are, but I believe, like I said, it needs a little bit more organization. they need to come together collectively, and they need someone that's going to lead them into a lot of these things that they're getting into. Because just like when they were out there with that Me Too movement, all of a sudden it fizzled out. We've seen young people out there, you know, with this Me Too movement, and they were protesting and they was talking about it, and now you don't even really hear anything about it. And it's not, and this was before the unfortunate murder of George Floyd. It fizzled out months ago. And if they can continue to stay organized, have someone that's going to lead them, and they continue to be in the community where they live, and stay in the now, and press that button on the key on the internet to reach those millions of people, I believe that these millennials can do it, and I can see good things for them.
All right. So, Christelle, what do you think that the millennials can do to have their voices heard?
Well, what I think that we can do and what we should do to have our voices heard is, number one, step up to the plate. Don't just sit back idly and wait for Bishop's generation to be the one to raise a hand first and say, hey, I'm here. But for us to actually step up and say, hey, we are here. Because whether we realize it or not, like when it comes to the church, you know, the church has always been a foundation, but we are the future of the church, the millennial generation. We are the future of the church. And to piggyback on what Bishop was saying, you know, when it comes to church stipulations, the millennial generation, we are judged so harshly. Like if a young lady comes in with a dress on that might be just a scotch above the knee, or a young man comes in with a pair of jeans on and a button-down shirt. Mind you, he has on a button-down shirt, but he has jeans on. He's judged like a thug. And instead of in the church house, instead of the elder or the older generation raising their hand, taking the millennial, reaching the millennial, bringing them in under their hand, saying, let me help you, my young brother, my young sister, to guide you and to show you the direction. They want to stabilize and judge us for who we are and how God has made us. Now, times, they have changed, y'all. They have changed. We are no longer in that, you know, whole wearing the skirt below the knee unless you're going to a certain thing, you know, where that's stipulated, because the Bible says, come as you are. But we still want the same respect that you give to the older generation. But our generation, we can do things, but we have to be the first to raise our hand and not wait for Bishop's generation to raise their hand. And like in the song that Prince said, we have to put up the L instead of the gun.
Thank you, Christelle, for that. We appreciate that. Go ahead, Ramel.
Before we get to Jamel, because I want Jamel to close on this segment, I want to get back to Bishop and get his thoughts on what he recommends or advise the millennials to do to have their voice be heard on a continuous basis.
One, stay persistent. Stay persistent. Regardless of what somebody says, as long as you know you're doing it for the righteousness, for the right reason, for the right purpose, stay persistent. Stay focused. Stay focused on what God has for you. Stay focused on how you can be productive. Stay focused on how you can deliver your message.
All right.
All right.
Looks like we experienced some technical difficulties with Bishop. All right. So before I get to Jamel, and Jamel, you're going to have to unmute yourself because the Bishop is having difficulty.
Yeah, I got you.
I like to say something before you close out this segment. And it wasn't that strong. There's something that goes on in Congress that bothers me a lot. Is that, God bless them, I see these men and women there, and they're in their 70s, close to 80 years old. They've been in Congress for 40 plus years or more. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the governor, the mayor, the president, they have a limitation to how long they can serve at those positions. And I think it's time to limit Congress, limit the Senate and Congress to their terms. Give them 8 years, give them 12 years. The reason why I say that for two reasons. One, when they enter Congress or enter that position, what they feel and their thoughts is going to remain until they retire. So if they're there for 40 years, we're not going to have change because they're going to continue with their same belief. So my thing is this, also, if they're allowed to stay there for 30 and 40 years, when does someone like you have a chance to come in there with fresh ideas?
Amen.
So to me, what I would like to see the millennials do, if they can get into changing laws and things of that nature, I would like to see you guys push your agenda that I have Congress and the Senate to have a limitation to how long they can serve, whether it's 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, 12 years, 10 years, whatever it is, not having somebody 80 years old like Nancy Pelosi. I mean, God bless her. She still has the marbles. She still can do the job. But on any other job, they've given you a pink slip 15 years ago.
Right.
You know, retirement is coming. And to me, that's an area I think that hasn't been touched or said that your generation, you millennials, can infiltrate and make a difference. Jamel, you have the closing thoughts on this.
Yeah, I wanted to first touch on like how can you get your voice heard out here. You know, we already have existing channels that we're just not utilizing, you know, to the extent that they can be. Like, you know, I was looking at Black Twitter the other day and how quickly like information spreads over Black Twitter. And if you just use it like in a targeted way, you can utilize that thing so well to get your message out there, get your message heard, and get organizing these things together. But, you know, there are also platforms like Meetup. You can use platforms like Meetup to like, you know, gather together with some people locally that share your thoughts and views. You know, you guys can talk and have forums together, you know, have some drinks, meet some people in your community. Also, there are Reddits. You know, go to Reddit. There are people that are already organizing things right now in your communities. See what's going on. Get yourself a part of it. There are councils and, you know, townships, things that you can get your voice heard about, like how your neighborhood is changing. You know, these are really important. Secondly, I want to touch on, you know, you got to educate yourself on how these things work. You know, like we like to put all our hopes and dreams in these like individual people, but like there are so many moving parts to the government, to business, to all kinds of things in order for you to survive out here. And we're not equipped with the knowledge that we need in order to navigate this system. So, you know, look up, you know, go on Wikipedia, go on all of the government, Library of Congress websites and stuff like that. Get yourself taught on like the laws, how to get things done, because you don't need a politician all the time to get real change. You know, you can lobby, we can get our money together and we can get lobbyists to sit there and defend us on our behalf, but we don't have that because we're not organizing. So that's the second thing that I want to mention is like educate yourself on how laws are passed, how you get real change in Congress, how do you get, you know, people out, you know, in 8 years, you know, because like shit, that is not going to happen overnight, but you can make sure that through your actions, somebody doesn't get in there in 8 years. And then eventually the law will change with your actions, but you have to start making change. Thirdly, and I just want to end on this, you gotta be content with the little change that you make out here. You can't always think that every little thing that you do out here needs to affect some major change or else it was a failure. Because if you affect 1 or 2 people out here, you have done God's work. You have done it. So be happy, be content that you can affect 1 or 2 people, because those 1 or 2 people can affect 2 or 3 people from there, and or 4 or 5 people from there. And then all of a sudden you have 1 million people that you've affected through that one word. So be content that your message may not have spread as far as you can measure it, because this thing is immeasurable. And I guess those are my thoughts. That's where I want to end on.
And those thoughts were very welcome and well said. Now, I like to say this has been a great show, but before we close, I like to go around and get a last thought, a final thought. Maybe it's something you haven't said. Maybe it's something that you want to go back on what you said, or maybe you want to piggyback off of what someone else has said. But I like to take the time out for maybe a 2 to 3 minute final thought before we close. And we're going to start with the Bishop. Bishop, please bless us with a final thought.
You're on mute, Bishop.
You're on mute.
I'm sorry. I was sitting here thinking. I was thinking of the millennial. Think about this. Noah was building an ark. No one had never seen rain, right?
Mm-hmm.
They looked at him like he was a fool, I'm quite sure. Why would this man be building this big old huge boat and it's never rained? You guys are building a boat, it just hasn't rained.
Yep.
Mm.
Yep.
Amen.
That's my closing remarks. Real simple. You're building a boat, it just hasn't rained. And allow
And
the
it
rain
looks crazy
to come.
from here. It looks crazy
That's all
from
I
this
can
vantage
say.
point.
Reverend
But
Christel, can you give us a final thought?
And yeah, to piggyback on what Jamel just said, about us making change in our communities. Like when I moved down to Greensboro, I was 12, 13 years old. They wanted to send me to Gateway, a school for disabled people, because I was disabled, because they had never had a disabled person in the public school system. But because me and my mother fought so hard, I got to go to public schools. They had to put an elevator in the school because I raised so much sand about wanting to be able to go to the second floor of the school. I extended my voice as a millennial at that time when we moved down here in 97, 98. And there's been things in my community that I've gone out and advocated for the disabled community. And, rolling around in a wheelchair. Most people would think, well, all she's doing is rolling around. She ain't making a change. But I guess I am, because people have said, people in the community know me, and Bishop can attribute to this. When I go to an event, they know me. They're like, oh, that's Woman Christel. They don't know me because of my wheelchair, but they know because of the changes and things that I've said and done in my community, because I'm not one just to sit by idly and wait for something to happen, because I've gone online and looked up laws, and if I see something that's going on in a city with a disabled person, I'm not afraid to call their mayor or their governor or their ADA office and set them off and tell them, like, look, this ain't right, you need to make a change. So if we as a people, not just Black people, but as people, millennials, period, will get up off our high horse or lazy behind, as some people might call us, and go ahead and make that change, this country could change. And it's time for us to put our hats on, go out there and deal with that rain and get our hair wet.
I agree. Before we go to my co-host, Tanya, I'd like to hear a final thought from Jamel.
Reparation, nah. Let me think.
That's a
Go
whole
ahead.
nother topic.
We want to hear that.
No, seriously, let's just get started, man. Put out whatever little effort you can out into this world, and always feel proud of how you're able to change. I'm living right now with a friend of mine, and I've been able to spend a lot of time with my god kids, of all things. And the things I've just been able to teach them in this short amount of time, the lessons that they can learn, the things I'm able to instill in them, the skills I can offer them, all of these things are valuable to our people. We just have to start giving it to our people, man. I for sure can do more, and I feel like I need to, but I want to instill in other people that do the same. You do whatever you can, use whatever you have in order to affect change out in this world, and you'll see change before your eyes.
I agree. Tanya, do you have any final thoughts at this time?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Ramel. I would just want to piggyback off of Jamel when he was saying that, you think that you're not making change, but that change, if you affect 1 or 2 people, you have made a change. And that small little change will make a large change, because it's a domino effect. And I just want to say that I'm not a millennial, but I believe that I made one change. And I'm just going to give you, can I give this small example? When the COVID hit, we were going out there, was going to the stores, and they was allowing people to go in and out of these stores. They wasn't like counting people in and out. So I wrote a letter on Facebook to my governor here in Maryland, Governor Larry Hogan. And I said to him, and I tagged him in it, and I know he read it. And I said, listen, this is what's happening out there. People are doing this. You know, we're not being safe. Next thing I know, on the news the next day, he mentioned the exact store that I was talking about. He had mentioned everything that I had said in that letter on Facebook addressed to him. And not only that, my coworker, his girlfriend, and a couple of people came up to me and said, Tanya, that was fast. I believe Governor Hogan heard what you said when you wrote that letter, because the change started in my store. So even if you write a letter and, you know, to get your voice heard, it will be heard. And that's what this platform is about. True Gossip is about your voice being heard, because your opinions, they truly matter. And thank you, Ramel, for allowing me to have that last thought.
Yeah, and just before we close, I want to give a final thought, and it pretty much is going to piggyback off of what all of you said. And Tanya was alluding to it once again. And I believe maybe Jamel may have said it, and maybe even Reverend Cristal. But when you're on the social media site and you express any kind of views, you can't measure who it reaches.
Yep.
You can't measure who takes what you do and run with it. You can't measure. Tanya just gave an example. She wrote a letter, tagged the governor, and the next thing you know, she saw a change. That's not a coincidence. It just, you don't know who it reaches. And that's the thing. It can get in the hands of this person shares it, now it gets into the hands of this person, and you don't even know how many people has been affected by it. You know, and that's the beauty of the internet and the technology, social networks that I should say, that are out there. And then the other thing I like to add on before we close is that Jamel was touching on it. You know, yeah, we all want change. I don't need to be rich overnight. I don't mind getting rich in a 10-year process. So what I'm saying to you is this: value the changes that aren't being made, even if they're in small increments. I mean, yesterday I'm watching CNN and I learned that of all entities, NASCAR removed the Confederate flag. Now, for whatever reason, let's throw that out the window. Why they did it? They might have just did it because they caught up in the moment. They might have did it for purpose. It was done. That's a huge step that, I tell you what, I would have never expected to see happen at least as quickly as it did. So
in a mostly white sport.
Dominated. So on behalf of my co-host Tanya and True Gossip, we want to thank all our special guests. I've learned something, and I hope you learned something. To our Bishop, a returning guest, we thank you. To Reverend Cristal and Jamel, representing the Millennials. I mean, you truly blessed us with some insight and took us into your backyard and shared some of your personal stories, your opinions, and we thank you. And for those who are watching, please take the time out to follow True Gossip on YouTube. You can subscribe to us. That's TruGossip. You can follow us on Facebook, like us, and you can follow us on Instagram. And listen, we're not politicians. We're not saying what we say is true. We just have opinions that we want to express together and maybe give you a forum where you can express your opinion, because True Gossip is about opinions that matter, opinions that we care, a platform that we're willing to share with you. Until next time, peace and blessings, be safe and be blessed.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen.